It's Friday. It's Friday. It's Friday 15, and I have picked up on our last conversation. We were talking about entry level jobs, and you brought up something about the next rung in the ladder, and I wanted to pick up on that because if we are talking about bringing more, intelligence, artificial intelligence, everything in, um, when intelligence becomes more abundant in the work, what does that mean for mid-level, executive level career? Like if before experience used to be, and that's intelligence, right? That used to be the thing. But now, if intelligence is a click of a button, what does that mean? What happened to that mid-level manager? What happens after?
Yeah, my mind goes back to just some basics. Um, a rudimentary concept is, well, when you're promoted, there are technical skills, there are people leadership skills, and then there's strategic leadership skills. And historically, right, the technological or the technical skills were there, and people would get promoted, not necessarily having the people skills, and maybe not having the strategic skills till later. Um, so almost like right away, we got to call a timeout. Well, who are we managing? What is the nature of the work? My wife and I were having a conversation about the definition of a team, and I said, well, wait a minute. In this case, the topic of our conversation, I'm like, that's not really a team. To me, a team is when people are interacting and have to collaborate in order to get a shared task done. Whereas and the example we were discussing was more like a work group where there were separate people working next to each other but had separate tasks. Well, so the idea of the next rung in the ladder, I think, would have something to do with, do I need to have people skills or do I need to have more management of technology skills? And, the strategy in some ways that I don't know if that even changes. At some point, you've got to think more strategic about where we're going. I will say this, though, before I let you jump in. Um, I I wonder if the people skills, because even that has changed. If I am overseeing a remote team that is collaborative and has a shared purpose, in a remote world, which is what is it, about 25% now of folks are working remotely, at least in some capacity. So the people skills, which has never been a strong suit for an entry level person jumping to the next level, right? Now it's almost like, well, who do you learn those skills from? Because your boss probably isn't very good at leading a remote team because he or she has just learned how to do that right, in the past few years. So yeah, that whole how do you get to the next rung? That's a mess. That's my official, very
It's a mess.
sophisticated. It's a mess.
It's a mess. Um, so the way I'm going to think about it is what. So and I think you started touching on it, but what would we reward, right? And so if in the past we rewarded people for experience and knowledge, right? That it was I I I got promoted to become a manager because I knew the right answers, right? I was when I'm on the bottom rung, I did the work, and then because I had that experience, I mastered things, and I got promoted to manage and supervise people because I knew the answers, right, and I could help those people.
Right.
If it's no longer about just knowing the answers because the answers are abundant or built into the AI or into the system, then what would we be rewarding to bring someone up into the next ladder? And so that's where I feel I'm looking at a glass half full knowing that there's a lot of half empty glasses out there as well. But I would like to think that what's really going to be that next rung is what I've seen in the reports, like workplace of the future in Davos and some of those other things about adaptability and curiosity, relationship building, because that is a rarer skill, right? It's someone who can do that, and sense making, putting the pieces together. I and just going back to good leadership. I think that those are still going to be things that are going to get rewarded and become what is needed on the next rung.
Hmm. Yeah,
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, and I said the only thing on the half empty side of it is companies are still going to value the mechanics and ignore that sometimes. Well, I would say to their detriment. I think when they don't value these positive, the curiosity and the sense making and all that, they're going to struggle. They're going to fall behind. I think the ones that are putting their eggs in these human baskets are gonna thrive.
I was listening to a podcast. It was about a firefighter and the job of fighting
Cheating on
fires.
this?
I'm saying, yeah,
Another
I only
podcast?
listen to our podcast, Jeff. I just keep playing us over and over. And I got to tell you, I'm learning so much. Um, he was talking about introducing AI into that whole suite of jobs. And so he was talking about the fact that AI has actually been around for decades if you want to expand the definition. So he talked about pilots. You know, you click on autopilot, and that's I think most commercial flights are going to be 90% in autopilot mode. Well, that's AI. You know, it's taxing for me to do the same monotonous thing over and over. I'll click a button, and now a computer's going to do it. So, okay, it makes me think that, and I don't know if this is an ONET job or capable of this, but it almost makes me think that there would have to be the development of a classification for types of jobs in terms of what AI adds. Is it adding something that is, in my example, compensating for limitations in what humans bring, things that we break down on. He gave an example for firefighters where AI can be listening for information that's coming through on a radio. So when a firefighter says, I'm lost and I don't know where I am in a building that's on fire, and you miss it as the chief, obviously there's going to be some dire consequences there. So so maybe there's jobs where AI is the perfect complement to humans. And what is that, just monitoring and listening, like in my examples? Or is it something that's more strategic? You know, it can do math more quickly. It can figure out logistics much more quickly. And so it makes sense that that would be a management, like I think we talked about last time for Amazon. Maybe there's potential there. Or is it something where it's the grunt work? So it's something I can set up 3, 4, 20 agents and get a bunch of work done. And now either I or someone else has to just edit and oversee what that is. So I bring all that up because to me, you asked about, what are we looking to? What is the thing that says, Paul's ready for the next rung or Paul's not ready? And I hear you, right? So I think a lot of that is I keep using the term a metacognitive skill. I understand what's going on, and now I'm being strategic about it. I'm switching gears. I'm playing chess now instead of checkers in terms of the work. And as soon as you recognize, Paul's at this other level, he's ready for some promotion. But I can't imagine that there's going to be one answer because of the different ways that AI could slot in for different types of jobs. So I'm back to it's a mess, I guess, after all of that.
Well, I'm trying to get you an answer, and you just keep like backsliding. You don't want to climb the rung. You just
That
want
is so observant of you. Oh, sorry. I'm still doing Paul, chat
to
Paul,
chat
Paul
Paul
GPT.
Joel, Paul GPT. I I think that but you did just say something that the used the word how AI is complementing, and again, you started going down this path where I felt like you were talking about what is the next rung on the ladder for AI, and not the
Oh,
people working with AI. And I'm sort of like, but it is sort of like, how well are you sort of maybe managing that, or working with that? It's part of that wrong element. But again, I'm still thinking about what is it we reward, what is it that we need, and I think that it is sort of managing of the different systems. It is leading people, leading systems, leading the bots, as you were talking about the agents, that kind of takes you to the next level. So my entry level job is supervising an agent. Then maybe my mid level job is supervising mini agents, or supervising people who are supervising agents,
mm-hmm.
making sure that we're connecting people, we're framing the problems the right way, we're influencing everything the way we need to. And then the level beyond that, like, so we have all this information that's kind of going on, and then maybe what leadership is really about is like, so now it's all about, we have all this information, right? It's deciding what information really matters, and what what systems we really need to have on, what systems are maybe becoming obsolete, or like, I'm coming back to the strategic choices of what we want for our people, what we want for our agents,
Mm-hmm.
just as we always have, like what leaders always should have been doing, but maybe it's a little bit more in that sense about what answers matter, what information matters the most in order for us to be successful as an organization. I don't know. I'm just trying to think about
Yeah.
how we what we value at each level of leadership.
You're making me think of the distinction between knowledge that comes from history, where think like regression analysis, right, in a statistical world. So we have the data in front of us to predict the future because the circumstances in the future will be exactly the same as the circumstances we have for the data. So AI becomes perfect for that type of role. On the other hand, when the situation changes, so for example, if we were having this conversation with AI wouldn't have any information that it could pull from the vast interwebs that would allow it to accurately say, here's where AI shifts, or here's what comes next, or here's the next level, or because that doesn't exist right now. And so, on the one hand, I'm agreeing with you. So maybe I'm now turning a little bit more half filled glass. People need to be the ones who do that. That is our strategy. We have to think about predicting something when we don't have the data to know what it would have been. We can only surmise and start to go forward with that. Um, and again, I think I'm sorry.
So we're going Bayesian.
Oh, whoa. That's a, yeah, that's twice now. You've totally blown my mind. Yes, it's a big mushroom cloud up there. I, you know, I, I am worried that us in organizational psychology and human resources, I think we collectively need to have a system in place, an infrastructure in place to answer the questions that you're posing, and start to pilot test. Well, does it make sense for the next run to be multiple agents? Does it make sense to now put a person up who's now supervising folks who are doing working with AI. And of course, that's trial and error. And as I said, we're not in a forgiving mode right now. Most organizations are operating very lean, and if we've got more of these new entry folks, they're going to make mistakes.
Yeah. Well, not only that, we're not only intolerant and lean, but we're also myopic. And I think that yeah, exactly. We need to look at, like, just as what we've been talking about. We started with entry level, but we've now talked about the entire career ladder, and we need to rewire the whole thing. We can't just look at, oh, we got worried just about entry level and we'll not think about the rest of the chain. Like, we have to be thinking about the holistic, and we're just that's just not something that's done very often or very well. And you go back and look at COVID and how they didn't change processes, right? They just fixed this and not really thought about like all the other implications. We're looking at this and there's all these other implications. So I totally agree with you that we need to think about all these implications, but we don't have the patience, we don't have the stomach for mistakes, yet that's how we get better. And we don't have the willingness to kind of step back when we really need to. And unfortunately, we're out of time to go beyond that.
We can't step back now. It's all up. Well, sir, despite our best efforts to talk about something not AI, we've done another Friday 15.
Listen, it's a new world. It's a new world, but we're still talking about people. So I'll cling on to that. I'll cling on to that. So
people who need people, they're the luckiest people.
They are, and with that, go be lucky with your people this weekend.
And, this is a PG rated show.